Welcome! I'm so happy that you tuned in today. I'm interviewing David Kitts, who's a licensed acupuncturist, and he does the most amazing energy work. And if you watch the video that's on the same page as this, then you know that because you have had the honor of receiving a short healing from him. He is quite a wizard, in my words, of course. And I just love his work, so I'm really happy to share an interview with him with you today. So, David, can you tell our audience how you came to do the incredible work that you do? I mean, one day you were simply, I don't want to say simply, but one day you were an accomplished acupuncturist, and then gradually you became a wizard. So how did that happen?
For the last 10, 12 years, I've been working with System of Sacred Anatomy, and I've come up with my own take on it, which I call soul structure analysis and healing, because that's basically what it is. It's a kind of acupuncture of the invisible body. Not that your internal organs are visible anyway, but but the part that you can't see that's kind of outside of your physical body as well as what's in it. And much like acupuncture, it is a way of understanding where something is as a way of understanding what to do about it. You know, from my long time learning from my many months and weeks of practicing with people, I have gotten to the point now where I can use a dowsing rod, which an issue is, and then physical issues have meaning. Where an issue is lodged, you could say, in your light body also has meaning. So just like, you know, a stiff finger joint might mean that you have difficulty being flexible with detailed issues. There's a way in which understanding the light body can give you access to really, really deep information about what's going on with you as a person and a soul as well as a spirit, and you can actually remove issues rather than just talk about them and replace them with more harmonious functioning, just as if you could, you know, do acupuncture on a finger and get it moving again.
Yeah, thank you. So it's hard for us to think of issues being as solid as our finger. Really what you're saying, David, is that right? That an issue can be impacted with energy work as easily as a hurt finger can be impacted with acupuncture. Is that right?
Absolutely. So much like acupuncture takes advantage of the energy distribution system in the body by sort of pulling congested energy out of areas that are blocked up by using opposite or related acupuncture points, you can use the dowsing rod and the awareness of the light body's anatomy to focus in on exactly where any kind of trauma or issue or actual injury in the light body is, and literally correct it mechanically. So it's an anatomical adjustment, even though it might have a whole lot of psychological meaning, which is just very appealing to someone like me who works with, you know, the physical body and points on it most of the time.
The points on the body.
The points on the body.
Right. So, of course, the focus of this website is always how can everything that I'm going to bring you on the website help us in reaching that place of quietude inside ourselves. And so I want to ask David, how has this work come to help you find a quieter place inside yourself?
Well, perhaps the most important aspect of this work is understanding and becoming aware of a portion of my light body anatomy that we refer to as the edge of the soul layer, which is really the place I got to when I went to visit Mother Mira. I didn't know what it was at the time, but it turns out that the actual core teaching of Desda Zuckerman's work is not only to be in your body and be in the core of who you really are, but also to be aware of the outer edge of your light body, which is like a third skin. You can think of as this is your first skin. Your second skin is the electromagnetic energy coming off of your physical body. Your third skin is the skin of the light egg. And by becoming aware of that and operating from a place of self-containment, it's much easier for me to be in the presence of disruption and disorder because I actually can be apart from it. I actually have a place where I can view whatever is going on with somebody without attempting to actually try to metabolize it or change it within my own system. It's a way of actually holding somebody in compassion, and if I actually do have to do some work, actually then being able to, from within my own container, reach into their system and change it with their permission. Without, it's like the difference between a surgeon, using surgical gloves and sterile technique or not. We just don't go to doctors anymore that would use a rusty old scalpel. So this is like the hygiene, you could say, of the energy work world at this point, is to understand what it is to be aware of your soul's container and operate from that place. Much more calming to work from that place.
So then the question that you might have, our dear listener, is how could the kind of energy work that David is speaking about doing, how could that help you come to a place of increased quiet in your own self? And David, could you answer that for our listeners?
Well, one of the most profound ways that would help you increase your own quiet is for you to be able to distinguish the noise within yourself from the noise outside of yourself. And so that cuts down at least by half immediately of the amount of stuff that you feel you have to be dealing with. Or a lot more, depending on how many people are in the room with you. So that makes a huge difference. It also makes it much easier to cope with the disruptions in your own system because you're not getting confused with somebody else's disruptions.
Could you address that a little more detailed? Because I think that it could be that people think that they're being able to distinguish between the noise inside and the noise outside, whereas in a way that you're talking about it might be a little different.
Most people who've been working with other people for a long time have an instinctive way of operating that is at least somewhat distinct, and it does create some professional distance, which allows them to operate more effectively. Because there are some sensory capacities, like our inner nervous system, for instance, extends far beyond our physical layer. The electromagnetic field, which comes off of our physical body, and the emotional layer of who we are, which is right next to our physical body, none of them really are capable of making a real distinction between self and other. It's almost like you receive a reflection of somebody within those particular sensory organs in our system. So if you are expanded out to your edge and you're operating from a place of self-containment, then you recognize those sensory inputs for what they are, as input from somebody else, and there's less of a tendency to want to jump in and try to energetically try to engage or change something about somebody. So it does also help create some distance in the sense that nothing ever has to be fixed in anybody. There's only seeing what is and then seeing whether there's a change is willing to occur.
So, what kind of things do you see where people think it's themselves and really it turns out to be somebody else's stuff or being, or can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, emotions are a really good example. Another good example is it's impossible to tell in my experience whether I'm having an emotion or you're having an emotion. The only way I can make a distinction sometimes, even when I'm at my edge, is to get out of the room and see whether I'm still feeling that way when I've gone far enough away. And sometimes that's necessary, and sometimes I can just go to my edge and go, that's not my emotion. But another example is, walking into a room, getting close to somebody and going, wow, I didn't have a headache a second ago, what the heck is that? And then recognizing, I'm picking up something about somebody. It's not my headache, it's their headache. And then, you might still feel it. It becomes useful information about what's going on for somebody instead of something that, oh no, now I have to take an aspirin, so.
So you could be working with someone might come, people often go to an acupuncturist for a headache, and then David would also be doing energy work because that's what he does. And so if somebody came to you for a headache, for instance, are you saying that you might find that there's somebody else's energy that's involved in, that has gotten caught up with their energy that's making you have that headache?
Yeah, well, one of the wonderful things about dowsing is that there are ways to check right at the very beginning of any session whether a person is cleared. We're working on them and not them mixed up with somebody else. So one of the first things I like to do, unless in rare cases for some reason it's necessary to leave it this way, is to point out the places where someone has become tangled up, you could say, with another person's energy. There's various ways that happens. Talk it through and then ask them to make a conscious effort to disconnect from whatever that person is doing in their system. And then when we've got them back in their own energy structure, then we're working on them and we're not trying to solve an extended system of energy.
So you say ask them to make a concentrated effort. In my experience from having worked with David, he guides you through that. So that's not something you have to figure out how to do on your own. He's holding your hand energetically while you're doing that and giving you direction, and makes it so much easier, because I could never figure out how to do that on my own. When I'm so caught up like that, it has a blinding effect where you really can't see in your own self. So I want to share a story of one time when I had a session with David that helped me get quieter in myself, which is that I always have had, all my life, a sense of overwhelm. I could never get everything done. There was always too much to do, and I just would feel overwhelmed all the time. And I had a session with David that was one of the most powerful sessions I've ever had with anybody in my life, where he found a past life where I was this Japanese man, this whole story, and I didn't relate at all to the story when he was telling it. And I was like kind of skeptical, and I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. And I was just there. But after he removed that energy from that lifetime, I never have felt overwhelmed again. It doesn't mean that I'm getting my things done any faster, but I'm not having that anxious, overwhelmed kind of feeling around the things that aren't getting done. And I'm really grateful about that. That has brought a lot more peace and quiet into my inner life. So thank you so much for joining us today, David. This was delightful. And if you haven't already, I hope you will go and watch the not watch, but watch and feel the energy healing that is on the same page as this. And you can also find out more about David on the expert page that I have on this same website. Thank you so much for joining us.